there is a lot more to know about the status column inside of Monday.com. And in this video, I'm going to be walking you through the advanced functionality and nuances that you're probably unaware of to make you an advanced user of just the status in Monday. So as you can see here, I'm inside of our example board within our example system within Monday.com. And the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is add a new status column. So to add a new status column, you should probably already be aware, is just press add column on the right hand side here, or you can do so in between different columns by going add column to the right and then selecting the status option. So we'll go ahead and we'll add a new status. First and foremost, you'll probably notice it really seems quite basic, plain and boring. Now, if you click into it, you'll get these three different options here, which is the traditional setup with a status column inside of Monday. And these are things that we can actually change, and I'll come on to that later on in this video. But to start with, first and foremost, we can go ahead and edit our labels. Now, editing our labels essentially means editing the different options within our status column. So we can go ahead and add new labels, so new label 1. And I can add as many of those as I like, up to I think 50. I think 50 is the maximum number of labels you're allowed to have. And you can also delete labels as well. Let's say I want to delete this label and I want to delete, clicking everywhere here, and delete this option here. We can also reposition labels, so you can drag one up, drag one down, move it however you like. Okay, so that's kind of like the absolute basics. Now, the next thing you need to know is what a status column's typically used for. Now, a lot of the time, I would use a status column, especially on an item level, to manage different stages of a process. So an item goes from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4. Now, in order to manage each stage, you would have a different column for each, or a different label for each stage of the process. So this might be, for example, pending. I'm going to make these up. I'm going to go active, or we could add a new label. Let's add, we don't want to use the colors we've just deleted. That is something to bear in mind. They auto repopulate. We got pending, active. We could use the red as cancelled, and then we can use the green as completed. Okay. And then we can go ahead and reposition our different labels. So completed is going to be at the bottom. Active is going to sit above pending. Active is going to sit above pending. We'll delete this blue label. We can delete the orange one as well. And then you can see here, we've got this one at the top. Again, I'll just delete this. So we've got active, pending, completed, and cancelled. Now, I see a lot of people use the default label, which is this grey one here, for a different stage, maybe like the 5th step in a 9-step process as the default label. And it's honestly, it's a shambles if you're doing that. You're making a catastrophic error. The reason being is because the default label is the label that's applied every time a new item is created. So what I would strongly recommend doing is, if you're using the status column to manage a process, you just put as the first label is, let's say, new. So it's kind of like the start of the new process. Every single item starts at new, then it goes active, then pending, then completed, then cancelled, or whatever the case may be. Okay, do not put, whatever you do, the default label as pending, because then all of them are pending. Every single new item you create is pending, so just keep it as active. Okay, so that's kind of step one. Pretty simple. You can edit the labels, change the colors if you want. If you don't like the pink, you can go for the gold, whatever you like. Now, the slightly more advanced feature is if you go to the 3 dotted button up here and go to settings, and then go to customize status column, you'll notice here that you can select this option down the bottom. Now, a lot of people are blissfully unaware of this. Essentially, colors indicate that an item has been completed. Now, if I untick the green, that means when the green is selected, Monday.com doesn't actually think that this item is completed. Now, by completed, it means that it's removed from the My Work page. There's like the little celebration-y thing as well. And the task is marked essentially as done within Monday.com. Now, what I would recommend doing in a situation like this is either selecting both of them, so cancelled is technically done and also the green completed is done, or if you're using the status column for maybe like a product list, for example, then I would have none of them. I wouldn't have any color options selected. And also, if you're using the status column for a product list or something that's not a process, I would typically leave the default label blank as well, because otherwise you'll have, like, every single time the product will also populate as the gray product, and you'll have to then switch it across, which can get very annoying. So settings, customize status column, and then the green and the red both indicate that the item is completed. So if I hit cancelled, it celebrates. If I hit completed, it celebrates again. But if I hit pending, it just updates the status. Again, active. Again, same applies for new. So often people don't know about that. It's like a sneaky little thing that people find out after the fact and can be quite annoying. Now, the third thing you'll probably realize, or what I want to discuss and explain to you today, is every time you create a new status column, it comes with this default label set here. Done, working on it, stuck. And if you're building lots of status options within Monday.com, it can become infuriating because you've got to delete stuff, got to delete all these labels to get started. Also, if you want to repurpose the green one, which I see people doing all of the time, so they change this to like, I don't know, product A, but just because you've changed the label name doesn't mean you've changed that the status is not marked as completed, so people forget to untick this. It just becomes a bit of a nightmare. So if you want to get around this problem, there is a way. You do need administrator access within Monday.com, but what you can do is you can go to your initials in the top right hand corner and go to administration, and then you can go to customization and go to boards, and you'll see here you can set board defaults. Now what this actually means is you can customize and sort the default labels for new board status columns. It saves you time and makes it easier for other users to understand the process you want to follow. Now, what I typically do is just get rid of everything bar one, and then I just have one letter. So AA, I don't know, as an example, then hit save changes. Okay. So now if you go back and then you go ahead and create a new status column, you'll see that the only status label is AA. It makes it a lot easier to manage. And the other thing that I've done is if you go to customize status column, you'll notice here that there isn't an item that indicates that something has been completed. So no one's ever going to fall victim to that particular trap as well. And you know, these are just handy, quirky things and stuff that's helpful to be aware of. I would always have the default label sat at the top, and then you can go ahead, add your new labels. You'll see here that the green gets added. But again, one thing to be aware of is when the green gets added on here, it is an indicator that something has been completed, which is a bit annoying, but again, you know, at least it's better than nothing. Or you could just have the green. But what I typically do is just avoid using the green altogether, to be totally honest. Now, the other factors to take into consideration with status columns is one, you can only have one status. So unlike a drop-down menu, you can have multiple selections per item. And then two, they can be obviously duplicated. And I have done a separate video on managed columns. So now you can have a status column that's managed. So you might have this same column on another board with identical selection options. And then if you change the options on one board, it will automatically update on the other board as well, as opposed to you having to go and manually update both boards with the new options or the options that you've removed, for example. So there's a video on that on my channel. Feel free to check it out. Hopefully this has given you a good insight into status columns, slightly more advanced functionality, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.